You're listening to the Betoota Advocate's weekly news wrap on Desert Rock FM 96.5. The date is the 16th of May 2019 and welcome to the Betoota Advocate News Bulletin. It's election week and we are back in the studio, both Errol Parker, editor, and myself, Clancy Errol, editor, with our newsreader Wendell Hussey, the Richard Moorcroft of the Diamantina Shire. How are you, Wendell?
Doing very well, thank you. How are you, fellas?
Very good, young fella. Good to have you back on board.
Yes, we're going great. Now, what's been going on in the news?
Well, first up, given it is election week, we've got a story here about the Dickson electorate being clouded by a colossal dark mark as Peter Dutton prepares for his final battle.
Yes, a large grey skull appeared in the sky this week. Dark clouds above the popular Strathpine Centre as he, who shall not be named Prime Minister, prepares for his ultimate battle this weekend against the Muslims who lived and, of course, his Labor rival in the Dickson electorate.
Yeah, and I've heard those close to Dutton said that the member for Dickson has divided what remains of his soul into 7 fragmented policies, spread across 7 factions within the Australian Liberal Party. And those fragments, known as Horcruxes, have been hidden in the disguise of policies aimed at not allowing brown people to live in Australia, Clancy, ridiculing disabled people and providing government grants to his wife's family's childcare centres.
Well, geez, it'd be hard to find all those Horcruxes, but if you have a guy who's as good as digging dirt as Malcolm Turnbull did in his dying days, I'm sure you'll be able to find those Horcruxes. That goes to the rival candidate, of course, who is aiming to take down Peter Dutton.
And now moving on to the other side of the campaign, we wrote a story about the nation's likely next Prime Minister, Bill Bradbury Shorten, raising eyebrows this week. He did so by showing off how multicultural he is and ordering a panini at Subway.
Yes, he's made some headway with a voter bloc that we didn't expect him to win over. The multicultural kind of voters. Bill Shorten's done well with the feminists and the female voters ever since News Corp wrote that article about his mother. He's done well with the unions. He's had them rusted on for a long time, but we never really saw him, making waves outside of the white upper middle class. But he's done that, and it's very impressive.
Yes, it's a little bit Italiana, I think, but I think that Bill's more or less a plain tuna and lettuce and mayo kind of guy, just on a white loaf.
Yes. I mean, usually, but it's election time, so he's going to get a little bit exotic with his ordering. And panini, perfect call. I think it was toasted cheese panini, but nevertheless, it was very impressive.
Still a panini. Now, we've had to cover this race to the bottom that is the federal election, but you sat down with a young man in Betoota Heights who couldn't care less about it all, Clancy.
Yeah, indeed.
And the story was, I'm not really that into politics, says underpaid apprentice who will never own a home.
Now, Wendell, you speak fluent townie, don't you?
Yeah, I'm well versed.
What does A mean?
A is the finishing exclamation to a sentence. You just sign off with the A.
Yeah, I didn't really hear that too often in my childhood, Wendell, out in Hong Kong.
King's English.
Queen's English. At the time, it was still the Queen, I think.
A is different to E.
Yeah.
A-Y-E is exclamation. E-Y is more of a question mark.
Yeah, this is just a throwaway finishing summation.
Now, this is a young bloke I interviewed named Cozza, who said that all the leaders of the major parties are losers. This is something he told me as he was breaking down asbestos panels and throwing them in a skip bin for $8 an hour. And he said Shorten has man boobs, which for him was a good enough reason not to vote for him, and ScoMo supports the Sharks, which makes him a loser. Now, Cozza is living at home with his parents because paying board to mum is cheaper than finding 6 mates to share a lease with. His main voter concerns are marijuana legalisation, which he then giggled at.
It's a bit hard to enjoy a bamboo schooner at the end of a hard day's work when you're living with mum.
Now, Cozza is a part of this demographic, I believe, that is voting based off the memes he's seen and the billboards he's seen. So Cozza's probably going to vote for Clive.
Yeah, there were a lot of comments on that story about that, and one of our loyal readers, Andrew Gilbert, commented saying voting for Clive Palmer is a gateway drug to voting for One Nation.
Arguably so. Maybe Clive will eat up One Nation's votes. We can only find out on Saturday.
And in some more local news from our humble regional outpost, you wrote another story, maybe indirectly about me again this week, Errol.
Yes, I did.
Half-sick colleague heroically comes into work to carry out duty to make everyone else sick.
Well, I think you've done a good job in doing that because I'm sick as a pike. And I know that Clancy's kids have been off school with rheumatic fever.
It's been fucked, mate. It's been all hands on deck at home. In fact, I'm at work just to get away from the place. So, arguably that story was about you.
And I do know that Imran in the sports department, he's out for your blood. If he sees you, he will crush your head like what happened on Lord of the Rings the other night.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't, I say.
Just fucking don't, Wendell.
I think it was Game of Thrones where the head got exploded like a watermelon, but
Whatever.
Spoiler alert, let's move on.
In the sporting world now, we broke a story from across the ditch with some devout Christians in the All Blacks somehow able to adhere to their faith without being fuckwits.
Yes, there's two sides to the sword. Of course, there's the incredibly incompetent ARU mixed with the incredibly entitled players who, are behaving in ways that if the All Blacks had behaved that way, they'd get fits with a nerve agent and you'd never hear of them again. They might show up in the back of fucking Japan somewhere, but, there seems to be a discipline in the All Blacks, Wendell, that we don't seem to have in Australian rugby. Maybe that's the death rattles. I don't know, maybe that's just the private school kind of attitude infiltrating, but, we don't know what's going on.
Well, I think at the heart of this story, Clancy, you've got a battle between, your right to express your religion and your right to free speech, which, of course, Israel can do anywhere. You just can't do it when you've signed on a contract that you won't do it. And then you can't come and cry foul when they want to boot you.
Oh, it's exactly the same as our last newsreader, Bruce Hitchcock, coming into my office when he was hungover and he wanted a pay rise, and we denied him that, and he came in and he told me I was a fuckwit and no one liked me. He had the right to say that. That's freedom of speech, but he also has the right to repercussions for his words, and he was sacked on the spot.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between being a fuckwit and acting like a fuckwit. And I'm not sure what Israel is doing now.
Well, I'll tell you who's not acting like fuckwits is the devout Christians in the All Blacks, because they are similar kind of setup over there, similar demographic, a few Mormons, a few evangelical happy clappers, and no one posting memes on Instagram telling my nephew that he's going to hell.
And more importantly, they keep winning games. So,
Suppose that helps.
anyway, that's all I've got here for this week's Bulletin. So that is all for today.
Well, happy voting.